Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated live on Channels Television. Well, the first full week of full trading week of August. Here's what's coming up in the next 55 minutes. Well, as protests remain in some parts of Nigeria, we gauge expectations for the economy in the second half of 2024. And Egypt's trade deficit decreased to $3.57 billion in May, marking a 10.3% drop. Plus, recession fears in the U.S. trigger stock sell-offs in the global markets. And it's great to have you join us. I'm Ladi Williams. Yes, if you're an investor, I'm sure you don't want to look at your portfolio today because you're down quite a lot depending on what you're holding. But if you're in a safe haven asset, then I guess you're good. But let's get a check on the oil market. Now, we're seeing oil prices hovering at an 8-month low with fears of recession right there in the U.S. as a top oil consumer. Knocking Brent down to $76.03 a barrel, big 1% drop. Same drop we saw from earlier today. Then we see the U.S. grade, WTI crude $72.65 a barrel. So I guess now we're wondering if $70 is going to hold for WTI at this point, because we're seeing most of these assets pull back really fast and really hard. 1.2% down there for WTI, and we know this is the grade that the Dangote refinery likes to import. So I guess that's good, for the refinery at this point at these prices. Let's get a check on the metals market now. Definitely, we know some investors love this safe haven trade at times like these. And so we're seeing gold actually looking better, 0.14%, $2,446 per ounce, maintaining that new high it hit a couple of weeks ago. But we're seeing on the flip side, silver, that's $27.45, down about 3.28%. And palladium moving farther away from that $1,000 psychological level, $847, down 3.91%. So I guess investors are only seeing the yellow metal as the safe haven right now in the metals market. To other stories now, we see the Odua Investment Company Limited has inaugurated its Lagos liaison office as part of a strategic effort to accelerate growth and expand its footprint. The building, which is a 62-year-old structure built by the former Western Nigerian Corporation, will henceforth, according to the chairman of the company, Nasotumba Bimbo Ashiru, become a meeting point for all organizations' subsidiaries. Mr. Ashiru says the opening of the new Lagos liaison office would act as a communication bridge between the holding company and the investment community.
We are into agriculture now. We have over 40,000 arable hectares, arable land that we are working on. Want to focus on cassava. What we are talking about now is that the food, we need food in this country, and we are focusing on that. We are investing more on that. We are focusing on agriculture and recession. And the new age technology, we want the youths to be able to do things with us. We have this hub with the state government. We have some state government. Even our foundation is focusing on IT. And we want to have the hub to be able to drive it, and we are driving it from the central here. Not only that, we are into oil and gas. We had the marginal field, bitter marginal fields, that by God's grace, hopefully by the first quarter of next year, we should be able to drill the first barrel. So we are focusing on hospital. We have hospitality, we have real estate, and they have the good news for you that all our real estate business has been moved to Wemabot, which is wholly owned by Odua Investment. So Wemabot is doing our real estate business. So the holding company is now a lean holdco. So Odua Investment Company is now the holding company, and we have all our subsidiaries under the Odua, and that's what we're focusing on.
Well, as the buzz about environmental, social, and governance compliance heats up, some companies in Nigeria have commenced reporting as investors assess organizations' business practices and performance. It's for this reason the Financial Institutions Training Center, FITC, is ready to key into this with the creation of an ESG institute to guide companies in aligning with global sustainability standards and supporting the Central Bank of Nigeria's sustainability goals. According to the Deputy Governor of Financial Systems Stability at the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Philip Ikeazo, represented by Mr. Nwabueze Ojiako. That's the Nigerian banks are more conscious of ESG compliance and meeting international standards of reporting. Take a listen.
The Financial Institutions Training Center has launched its Sustainability and ESG Institute designed to address pressing ESG issues.
The way that as individuals we're not conserving water, we're not contributing to preserving the planet, we're not consolidating opportunities for the future, we're actually leaving lights in our rooms for hours even when we're not in those rooms, ensuring that more energy is even, produced, which comes at a cost, and so many things. So every single individual has a role to contribute beyond the organizations, beyond the energy companies.
As financial services providers in Nigeria move to improve ESG reporting, the FITC Sustainability and ESG Institute establishment follows the Nigerian Bankers Committee's launch of the Nigerian Sustainability Banking Principles.
In the last 11 years of adopting and implementing sustainable banking principles, Nigerian banks have worked to ensure that they conduct their businesses mindful of their positive and negative impacts on the society and the environment. Our commitment to sustainable banking has been to promote market-driven sustainable business models that would enhance the competitiveness, resilience, equitability of the Nigerian economy.
Stakeholders say ESG integration enhances business sustainability, risk management, and investor appeal, while fostering societal benefits like environmental preservation and social equity.
We're dealing with extreme levels of poverty. How you know is part of the problems in this room might be, and I'm not saying that's a problem, the AC isn't cooling very well. The coffee isn't as hot as you want. That's an urban elitist problem. The fellow outside's problem is completely different. So the problems the West is dealing with is different from the problems we're dealing with. They have high production, high GDP, so there's pollution.
Looking from both internal and external. So when you're looking about social, you touch on labor practices, right? Labor practices with your employees, creating decent jobs, also creating decent jobs along the value chain. You talk about community engagement, community development. You talk about inclusivity, right? Making sure that your policies are inclusive.
As ESG compliance trends keep evolving and reporting no longer optional, it remains to be seen how businesses in Nigeria prepare for stricter standards.
And I guess we can call August, the way it's kicked off, the month of discontent. But we'll see how it plays out going forward. But let's turn to the president's speech. You see, the President Tinubu took out time to speak about the various economic interventions put in place to assist Nigerians in the face of the economic downturn. The president cited the launch of compressed natural gas initiative to power the transportation economy and bring costs down, noting that it will save over 2 trillion naira a month being used to import PMS and AGO and free up resources for more investment in healthcare and education. Let's take a look at some of what the president had to say.
I am especially pained by the loss of lives in Borno, Jigawa, Kano, Kaduna, and other states, the destruction of facilities in some states, and the wanton looting of supermarkets and shops, contrary to the promise of protest organizers that the protest will be peaceful across the country. The destruction of properties set us back as a nation, as scarce resources will be again used to restore them. I commiserate with the families and relations of those who have died in the protest. We must stop further bloodshed, violence, and destruction. As the president of this country, I must ensure public order in line with the constitutional oath to protect the lives and property of every citizen. Our government will not stand idly by and allow a few with a clear political agenda to tear this nation apart.
Well, the president's speech has triggered a number of reactions, some inspired and some are not impressed at this time. Let's talk to Mr. Oji Dumezwe, is the CEO of Flame Consulting, joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you.
Always my pleasure, laddie.
Right.
To be here. Thank you.
A lot has played out since August 1st, and definitely I'm sure you watched our coverage, of it, and which we're still, covering from time to time. But definitely the president, everyone was expecting the president will come out and say something, and he has come out, and he did commiserate with families that lost loved ones and also businesses, that got looted at this time. So I'd like to get your key takeaways from everything the president said.
I think the president's speech, with all due respect, is a self-indictment on the current government. It looks to me like the government just waited for the violent part of this protest to play out so that they can come back and say, oh, we told you so, that's going to be violent. It is a duty of the president as the commander-in-chief of this federation, and the duty of the chief of defense staff who made some political statements some days ago, and the duty of everybody who is in charge of security in their different states to protect businesses and individuals. Peaceful protest is never a violent thing. All right? The government has a duty to protect the protesters as they march along anywhere they would like to protest, and not like the judicial statement that were made that they are restricted to a particular place. That's not within the Constitution. We're going to come to that later. So whenever there's a peaceful protest,
even when we know some of the protesters want to actually block some major roads and some economic activity.
It is wrong for me to accuse or to blame protesters for whatever went wrong in some of the states, like we heard in Kano, Borno, and so on. It is a duty. This protest was announced several days before it happened, even though I'm coming to my own view about the organization of that protest, because the protest had to be even better organized and held on seriously for the number of days they have announced that. Okay, but it's the duty of government, having known and having been put to notice that this protest will happen, it is their duty to galvanize all the defense systems, the police, all the security apparatus in this country to ensure that public peace was maintained while the protest also went on. The duty of the army, duty of the police to ensure that while the protest was going on, every business and every individual in this country, was well protected, so that those who were protesting innocently and peacefully could go ahead with their legal activity or constitutionally guaranteed activity, while those who were out to make trouble would be curtailed by the president, commander-in-chief of armed forces of the Republic of Nigeria, and of course other security agencies. So if they failed in doing that, it's therefore, quite annoying, I would say, for the president to now come and say, oh, the protest went violent and he wants to commiserate with families. That's gaslighting.
But I'm wondering, is it possible to have a violent free protest in a country where you have over 60% multi-dimensionally poor?
Hungry
because
people.
I'm wondering, these are a lot of hungry people. And you know what they say about a hungry man.
Okay, and
so is it possible to really have a violence-free protest in a country with over 60%?
It is possible, but it means that there's so much work that must be done by the police, basically, the other defense systems, the army, and so on, before the protest. Assigning people at different locations where they know there could be uprisings and so on. It could be done. But because government, instead of focusing on doing that, ab initio started threatening that the protest must not hold, that it was illegal, and we even saw a few judicial pronouncements in a number of states in the federation saying this protest is restricted to particular places. So instead of government working proactively to deal with possible consequences of the protest, they were busy threatening that it must not hold. And that was part of why the protest was not, in my own view, very well organized, because the organizers who were also not very assertive initially, were almost like believing government that it shouldn't hold, so everything was hanging in the air. So even as it now held, it wasn't well organized. those who were on top of that, protest did not take charge of what they wanted to achieve. Even the complaints or what their grievances are not well articulated. You have a number of things written here and there in different platforms and so on, but they were not organized. If you ask me, I suggest that all the economic policy activists, social activists, civil rights activists groups in this country should more than ever before come together to form a very, stable and sustainable coalition.
But isn't that expected from a leaderless protest?
When you have a leaderless protest, it will go the way this one has gone. Right. But it was meant to be led. But because government started threatening early on, instead of trying to find out who were the leaders, how to make the protest peaceful, they were busy threatening fire and brimstone. And, as you would expect, human beings, they started, taking cover, even denying that they were, people were denying who was protesting. They would call, it's Peter Obi, it's Labour Party, it's civil activists and so on. It wasn't clear who was galvanizing it. If the real planners are known, I would like to identify with them. Because for me, in my view, and I have the right to it, peaceful protest is the only line of defense left to save Nigeria's democracy at this point. With all due respect to my lords, all the judges of the state and the federal courts in Nigeria, the judiciary is no more the hope of the common man in Nigeria, looking at the experience we've had in the past years in this country. The legislature, both the state and federal, are no longer working in our favor. We have found most legislators almost captured, only rubber stamping whatever the executive government says. The executive themselves are also not willing to make any sacrifice for the good of this nation. So the three tiers of government, the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, have all failed us in this country. And the political class are not helping matters. We have selfish kind of politics going on in this country, whereby more than 90% of the wealth of the nation is lying in the hands of 1% of people. And if you look at it very well, it's because we are incentivizing bad politics. Somebody can be extremely poor today. Once you grab one position, even at the local government level, you become a millionaire. So what happens now? People are now doing whatever possible, even killing people, doing rituals, doing all kinds of crazy things, sycophancy, hypocrisy, just to get a political appointment, hoping that will change their life for the better. So once you see these people get elected, they forget the masses of the people, and then they go on the side of the bourgeois who are eating large while expecting Nigerians to keep adjusting their belt until they die. So it's a very bad situation. So the only way to rescue whatever remains of our democracy is to allow people to speak their mind in a peaceful manner. So for me, peaceful protest is the only line of defense that we have right now. Right. And if we get it killed, then we are all gone. Nigeria is on a precipice. And any further movement in the way we are going right now, we may see people eating human bodies. Nigerians are actually so hungry. I can tell you stories. Even yesterday, somebody spoke with me and said a young man in their office just went berserk. He went mad. He had a lot of bills to pay, hospital bills, food and so, children's school fees, and his salary was not covering anything. So we're seeing mental health issues. Mental health issues everywhere. People are frustrated. People are depressed. When Nigerians sleep today, they don't actually look forward to waking up in the morning because they don't know what the new day will hold. All right, so if it's possible to stay in a state of sleepiness for a long period without having to worry about issues around life, medical, food, and all, Nigerians are willing to do that. Waking up is almost like a horror right now in Nigeria. All right, coming from the previous administration, definitely we know what the Nigerian economy and what this current administration inherited, from the previous the Buhari administration. So, looking at how the economy played out in those 8 years, and looking at over 1 year plus now, do you think that what do you think is the way to come out from the issues that we had in the previous organization, from FX issues to, we saw inflation also, trending up. We even started hiking rates. The previous administration was a disaster. It was a disaster, all right? Nigerians hurriedly chased away the Goodluck Jonathan government, hoping that we'll get something better. Some of us spoke in a manner that we did. Let's leave that, let the sleeping dog lie. But if you watch even today, the paradox of the whole thing is that this government, were the same people who led the campaign against removal of subsidy, even though we all agreed. Every well-meaning Nigerian who is knowledgeable should know that subsidy has remained a major source of corruption and fraud in this country. So we all stood for that subsidy removal. which the last government, 8 years of Buhari government, did not try to address. They kept complaining and they kept shifting the date for that removal. So you can say that the government of our dear President Tinubu took a bold step, albeit carelessly, in moving the subsidy. When the Okonjo-Iweala team, the economic team, was planning to do that, and there were engagements around the whole country, we know the popular voices that actually outrightly did not allow that process to go on.
Would it have been better to wait maybe 2 years or 3 years before subsidy?
No, it doesn't have to take 2 years or 3 years. 1-2 months of sacrificial action by government to show that they were willing to adjust on their own part would have done the magic. During the time of Goodluck Jonathan, the engagement that were being done around the country was to let people understand the pains the country was going through in that subsidy removal process. But people who run the government of today were blatantly saying we didn't want to hear any argument. Do not remove this subsidy. Paradoxically, they are now the ones who removed it carelessly without even engaging anybody. And that's what we're suffering today. Subsidy removal is a very good thing for this country. And even though the protesters have said it clearly, and I stand with the protest, but looking from point of knowledge, you cannot possibly argue or say that it is right for our president to come out today and say, oh, if this subsidy reason why you're protesting, we're going to reverse it. That will not be expected at this point. All right? And you don't also say, oh, we have to peg Naira at 800 because it's also causing inflation. All right?
Because there's a cost to all of that.
That cannot happen. And that's why if you have a coalition of these activists who want to protest, they have to articulate economically viable and possible arguments that can convince government. And if we have enough time, I can make those suggestions myself here.
I'd like to hear those suggestions.
So because we need to protest in a very organized manner and get government to understand what we believe that must be done and what's also possible to be done. So, all right, so now we are here. This government, let me tell you, it took boldness, even though it was done carelessly, to remove the subsidy, even though many of us still believe that there's some level of subsidy still going on. But let's leave that by the side. But what has been removed has given rise to higher level of revenue for this country. At least we hear now that they share more money in the at the FAC committee. But the question you want to ask is, all the revenue that we have gained from the subsidy removal, who have that, release extra revenue? Who have benefited from that revenue? Have we seen government use part of that revenue to address the hunger, to address the needs of people? Government can afford to place, very cheap bus across every local government in this country. They can do that with some of the savings, But so what you see is that as we get more revenue, we are funding more largesse by this government, by political class. By the way, but when we talk about this government meeting a very big burden, from the previous government, the question is, what are they doing to show that they're willing to sacrifice to get these burdens, lifted and not worsening the situation? Yes, they have done one or two good things by removing the subsidy, but what have they done to counter the negative effect of these policies?
How do they counter that? Because we know this government has complained about revenue.
It may look simplistic, but I assume that if this government wants to care about Nigerians, as we have made some huge savings by removing the subsidy, government should not go increasing their expenditure, particularly, recurrent expenditure, buying more cars for legislators, building. But
we heard that this particular government
with billions of naira
is spending more on capital expenditure than recurrent at this time. Looking at the budget.
At what cost, Ladi? Can you look at our debt obligation? How it has almost tripled in the past few years. For every single drop of capital expenditure you see in this country, so much more have been borrowed. And we are diving deeper into a regime of debt unsustainability, debt trap, like Ghana that announced, insolvency, illiquidity recently, unable to pay their debts. Nigeria is almost at that point. Even though arithmetically, due to the, securitization of our ways and means, yes, you find that the debt service to revenue ratio has dropped. But fundamentally, our debt burden has increased. So for every single, investment in infrastructure you see in this country, so much is being borrowed the more. And even the payments of salaries and so on, this building of, erected building for legislator, building this for the vice president and all of those, 25 billion, 700 billion, it's a no-no. But a government that's running a very broke an insolvent nation almost. So you expect that if this government is sincere, in fact, for any government that wants to turn Nigeria, from the backward movement we're making now to a forward movement, that government must be willing to sacrifice hugely. How do we see the sacrifice? You must cut down all this frivolous expenditure. You are doing a building for Vice President with 5 billion. What are you building? Are you building heaven and earth in Nigeria? What are you building? Give me that contract, I'll give you a fantasy building in 500 million or less than that. We all build, and we know the cost of building materials in this country. So it doesn't show carefulness. It shows carelessness and the willingness to continue the wasteful spending. If you look at
that's
if you look at how
only
much
solution right now.
For me, the only thing,
sacrifice on the government
even
side.
though the protest appears to be subsiding, I was on the road coming here, and I found that people are moving, skeletally. Not much is happening right now. So for me, the protest could be postponed, but we must come back with it in a more organized way. The only thing that the president would have spoken in that speech that will make me feel like they are beginning to answer Nigerians, answer us, is, today, or I give 1 month. Nigerians, give me 1 month. We have about 700 parasocial agencies, MD, and so we're going to cut that down to 400. If I don't, hold me accountable. Come back with a protest. Nigerians, we have 50 or so ministers instead of maybe 36 plus 1 the Constitution provides for. I promise you that in the next 1 month or 90 days, I'm just making this point for those who are coalition, who are organizing this protest, to articulate this thing properly. In the next 90 days, if it cannot be done right now, next 90 days, hold me to it. We're going to cut down the ministries to maybe 39 or 40. And trust me, all these aides, special assistant to the minister of this, assistant to special assistant to the minister of that, assistant to who's doing the job, everybody's an assistant. And you see all kinds of offices, cars and so on being wasted. You ask a question to a minister here about the cars in their pool. Even though he claimed he had only 2, trust me, he won't have more, less than 10 in his pool. He could use 2 at a day, but they have a whole lot of, assets.
So bottom line, because of time, bottom line,
so
we need to see sacrifice from the government.
Okay, let me summarize it. The sacrifice I want to see today is that government must immediately, Kenya did that. Even though it took the death of the people in that protest for them to happen. And people say, why do we have to protest and die? And I tell them, are we not all dying by installments? Today, Ladi, I can't go to my village. Nnewi used to be a most peaceful city in Nigeria. Today, it's not anymore. In fact, the whole of Southeast, even in Northeast, Northwest, even in the Southwest, who can go freely to their village anymore? We can't. And you hear a lot of your friends dying by, kidnapping, accidents on bad roads, banditry and all of that. And we say, it's not yet our turn. We are all dying by installments. We can either die at the protest ground, or we die in the hands of bad governance in this country. So why Nigeria may not be, worth dying for right now, we are dying in Nigeria all the same. So I want to see a country where, quickly, if you want to look at what outcome we'll see for this protest to end, eventually, government must seriously adjust the size of the cost of running this government. The Oronsayan report they gave a lip service to is another white paper to white paper again. Let us see the end of that, amendment, mergers, acquisitions, and all of that of government agencies. It must happen. Let us also start the process of fiscal and even geopolitical restructuring of this country to make it easier to run our states and make these states profitable. Right? I can't say details. Let us see the corruption in the oil and gas system, handled. Let Dangote's refinery and other refineries be able to get crude oil at a very good rate in this country, so we can stop wasting the dollar that we get when we export crude. There's a lot we can recommend here.
So much to refine. So much to refine right here in our country. Thank you so much. Always great to have you perspective. Mr. Orji Demezwe, CEO of Flame Consulting.
Thank you for having
me. We hope for the very best.
Nigeria is our nation. I have single citizenship.
I have no other country.
I don't plan to have any other country except presidency. So we have to get this country right. It's all our duty to do that.
Thank you so much. Well said. All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we're going to head straight to the markets. I said it before. Hope your portfolio is hanging on tight. We'll be back in a moment. All right, let's get a check on the markets now. And as I said before, the headlines we keep seeing right now is plummet. Most of the global markets we track. But Anita is going to give us the details right here for the local bourse. We're seeing the local bourse actually looking good at intraday. Good afternoon.
And of course, it's quite interesting to know that last week, We saw 4 straight days of profit taking, which knocked off about 107 billion naira. But of course, on Friday, the market took a little bit of breather. They were trying to make that comeback, but that was not enough to pull it back into positive territory. So we're down by about 0.4, about 0.7. Just we were in the red.
Red for last week, yeah.
Yes, but take a look at your board there. We still have just a little bit of glimmer of hope for the start of the week. Last week we were at 97,745.75 for the index, but now it has climbed, although it has lost the 100,000 points, but they're still trying to make it back to 98,000.
It's quite incredible seeing a green index, on a day like this with a global meltdown. But I guess we'll see how other markets. And the main
surprise is that Nigeria's stock market is the only one in the green at intraday, because I'll be giving you much more details about the indexes of other global markets that we cover, at intraday and of course for the close of Monday's trading session. Right, so straight away, we take a look at our market here. At year to date, it has just come down all the way from the 35% that it had recorded since sometime around February and this year, and it has gone down to about 30.7% in the positive terrain. But we see at intraday 0.16%, and no thanks to, that's all thanks to bargain hunting. The market investors there are trying to pick up the bones of the sell-off that we saw last week from the likes of MTN Nigeria, FBN Holdings, UBA, and some other big bellwethers which are leading the market. But for the South Africa JSE, we see there a massive 2.02% pullback at intraday. For the other sides of the market, let's take a look at how the EGX closed 2.12%. That's also massive, more than 2% decline. And for the Kenya Stock Exchange, for Friday's trading session, 0.88%, almost 1% decline for that market there. So now you have it there. The global volatility, which is riveted across the European markets, the Asian market, as well as the US market, even down to the Middle East. But we'll be giving you all of that figure much in minutes to come. But before that, let's go to our guest for the market, where we'll be talking about the impact of the protests everywhere. Most likely 2024 might be called the year of protest, because it's almost everywhere that you have this protest. But in Nigeria, it's about the hardship, which of course dominated the whole of last week and disrupted business activities. So now let's talk to Abiodun Adedotun, equity trader at FBN Quest, to give us more details about how the market is responding. Well, of course, we know that the protest, this is day 5. It has lost some of the steam, but it's still ongoing. And in the midst of it, we still have earnings report greeting the market. Thank you for joining us, Abiodun.
Hi, Victor. Good afternoon.
Okay, yeah, good afternoon. So, well, it's, this is 5th day. The protest, it started midweek, the middle of last week. But so far, how has it played into investor sentiment? I know, yes, the market was open for the two days that the protest began. But at the moment, what is making the market to be in the green at intraday?
Actually, the market is in the red as I speak with you, and is largely because of a massive decline in telecoms giant MTN Nigeria. And you recall MTN released its earnings report for half year 2024. It continues to remain in the negative, and investors are showing a bit of aversion in the names. In terms of the protest, of course, this is actually a time for every Nigerian to continue to maintain this sober reflection. Has it really affected the market? Perhaps yes, because of course the mood across the nation is a bit dampened. We observe the crises that happened in states like Kano, Jigawa, and a few other places, right? Investors will always also continue to maintain caution, because businesses which they put monies or committed monies to are spread across all these states. And of course, it's time to continue to reappraise, hoping that this situation does not really escalate. So the protests have not helped matters at all in terms of the market activities.
Okay, so now still talking about the market, we've pushed aside the protest, but this time let's take a look at the earnings, this first half of the year earnings, as well as maybe some second quarter earnings. How is the market responding to some of the latest earnings results? Is there any impact?
Not so much yet. Of course, the market is supposed to continue to be attracted to banking stocks, but we know what happened with the federal government's announcement of the windfall tax on FX, and that stayed there, an issue that is lingering because a whole lot of investors or market stakeholders don't really have clarity on what is going to be, how big the impact will be on the banks going forward. Of course, you expect the banks to continue to come stronger. They appear to be the one benefiting the most from the whole FX devaluation thing. For the consumer goods, we know they've been underwater, especially those that have FX exposure in terms of cost, in terms of borrowings. Nestle Nigeria, and just a few of them, they are still underwater. There's not so much to be done in that space. MTN, of course, a major one. We noticed the FX has not really helped matters, and it's looking like it's widening. So across sectors, the FX thing appeared to be a major issue, and especially for some of these notable big names, and which is running in the mind of investors. So the market is not really moving on that yet.
Okay, a final one, just in about 20 seconds. How is the intraday market? What's your expectation? Intraday, yes, you said is negative, but what's your outlook for the close of Monday's trading session and the course of the week?
With this MTN that's printed lower because it's gone about 5% downward, right? Except and MTN is actually one of the heavyweights of the market in terms of its influence on the broad market index. Except we get positivity in another big name, maybe it's fierce competitor Airtel Nigeria, maybe it's Seplat or something like that. The market is likely to close lower today. Though the banks are holding forth currently as we speak. Of course, the recapitalization exercise is still out there. You have the big banks and the medium-sized banks, juggling and weighing investor for capital. So that's still there, up for grabs, and I think investors are playing pretty nicely there.
Okay, Abiodun, I think we'll leave it there, and of course, keep our eyes out on how the market ends the Monday's trading session. But thank you so much for your analysis on our show.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that was Abiodun Adedotun, equity trader with FBN Quest for the market numbers at intraday. And now from Africa, we fly over to the Middle East, where global meltdown volatility is also taking its toll on the Abu Dhabi, both on the Abu Dhabi and the Dubai FM, both on the United Arab Emirates. The markets are taking quite a bashing here, 3.21% at intraday for the Abu Dhabi, and more than 4.6% for the Dubai FM there. You see the markets all in the red. On the other side of the market, we see Saudi Arabia also taking a bashing. It's not spared from it, and as well as the Qatar Stock Exchange. In terms of for Saudi Arabia, we saw that the PMI came in lower. The PMI for July, it came in at 54.4 against 55.0, and that's the lowest reading since 2022, just about over 2 years ago. And from the Middle East, we fly over to the world's biggest economy, which is the United States, which is causing all of this panic, all the sell-off, and all the worries, because last week we had the story that the U.S. economy, that's the world's biggest economy, is on the side of a recession, and that's why we see the Dow Jones Industrial Average 1.62%. That's for the stock futures here before the market, before the opening bell at 2:30. For the S&P 500, we see 2.66% decline. For the NASDAQ, we saw 4.06%. That's for the tech heavies, where you see all the big tech companies there, both in the US and outside. So that is why the market fell. And of course, still talking about the brutal week which the market is coming from since last week. The market will also British spending, we'll be expecting earnings season to continue, Walt Disney, Caterpillar, and then, of course, the market is also expecting a PMI, which is the ISM data, which is expected to show a 50.9 increase, Ladi. So that's, I'm sure you're going to give that update.
Markets at this point, but we'll keep tracking to see if there's still more sell pressure. Thank you so much, Anita, for the details. And that is quite interesting. Anita had a red tie right there. He was spot on with choosing that tie. Well, let's look at other stories now. Seeing the UK, the grappling with the worst social unrest is seen in years as rioters cause a carnage, setting fire and breaking into hotels used to shelter asylum seekers in northern England. British police have clarified that the suspect was born in Britain. The government called for an emergency Cobra meeting following this weekend's unrest. On Sunday, with no protesters vandalized and set ablaze 2 holiday inns in northern England. One in Tamworth, which had previously been criticized by a local politician for housing asylum seekers, and another in Rotterdam. Violent protests involving hundreds of anti-immigration groups have also erupted in towns and cities across Britain. Let's take it on to Europe now. See, world food prices eased slightly in July, and that's according to the UN. But while grain prices have fallen to the lowest levels in nearly 4 years, a drought in Eastern Europe and geopolitical tensions could affect global maize supply. DW correspondent Chimbono Chimbelu joins us now from Berlin. Great to have you, Chip. So tell us more about this drought in Europe.
Thanks for having me. Laddie, it has been a very hot and dry summer in parts of Eastern Europe. In Ukraine, which is one of the world's most important corn exporters, temperatures reached 38 degrees Celsius last month. And in neighboring Romania, the EU's biggest corn producer, the situation isn't better either. Now, the ongoing drought in Romania has affected crops on more than 2 million hectares cultivated with corn and sunflower. Experts say that the corn harvest could be 20 to 30% lower than was expected this year. Now, the decline in corn production could mean that the EU will have to import more maize from other regions. But the effect on global prices isn't expected to be significant just yet.
All right, so how much of a concern, is the drought?
Well, the drought is more of a concern for EU countries that import grain from Ukraine and Romania in particular. They may experience higher prices not just for corn, but also for animal feed, which of course requires corn. But the situation is different in Eastern Europe. Many silos there are filled with grain. Farmers in the region had been holding on to their produce when prices fell after the EU opened its borders to tariff-free Ukrainian grain imports in a show of solidarity after the Kremlin blocked Ukraine's Black Sea ports. For instance, Poland imported more than 2 million tons of maize from Ukraine last year. And that is, of course, up from just more than 6,000 tons of maize in 2021. So many Polish farmers were hoarding their harvests last year, hoping to benefit from higher prices later. So despite the decline in this year's harvest, there's still enough corn in Europe. However, there's still concern about food security. There is, of course, no guarantee that Russia will continue allowing grain exports from Ukraine, Romania, and Bulgaria through the Black Sea.
All right, talk to me about the markets in Europe.
Laddie, the market rout has deepened, of course, in Asia already. Japanese stocks wiped off all the gains they had made this year so far, but the sell-off isn't expected to be as deep on European markets. The rout here is smaller because stocks here haven't been performing as well as those on Wall Street. Still, European investors are just as concerned about the economic downturn in the US as their peers elsewhere. Job creation slowed and, of course, unemployment rose in July in the United States. And now there are fears of a potential recession in the world's biggest economy. Now, the consensus appears to be that the US Central Bank may have waited too long to cut interest rates. Tensions in the Middle East, of course, aren't helping either. While oil prices initially benefited from concerns about a wider conflict, prices were later dragged down because of concerns about global demand. Investors will be keeping their eye on developments in the region. And of course, here in Europe, they will also be looking out for PMI data from the EU's 4 biggest economies: Germany, France, Italy, and Spain.
All right, Chip, thank you so much for the details. We'll see if these sell-offs actually get into the next day. Let's look at other stories now. Well, as disposable incomes squeeze, businesses find it harder to make sales as consumers seek for cheaper alternatives. How can a business stay afloat? Let's get a sense of that now. Joining us is Kizito Waigwe, is a product service designer. Great to have you on the show.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yeah, so these are quite interesting times for businesses and consumers. So talk to me about how a business can set themselves apart, at this time and still retain, customers and still look, attractive, even though we know disposable incomes are not looking good.
So I would say product design in stable economic period focuses more on optimizing customer experiences, enhancing service delivery, and differentiating services in a very competitive market. And this could include investing in technology and also improving customer support in every sector. So during economic downtime, it could be very different because the focus of service design shifts towards cost efficiency and maintaining service quality with limited resources. So the priority is on streamlining the operations and enhancing essential service features. Also, to ensure accessibility in all the products and affordability, because these are downtimes and we need to also understand the customer aspect and the customer's point of view in every product.
All right. Yeah, you did mention, product design at this time, but do you think consumers will be looking at, product design at this time, knowing that their monies cannot go that far? Is that going to be something that actually keeps a customer at this time?
Yeah, so one of the challenges during this period is trying to create opportunities for innovation. So for designers to be able to create these opportunities, we need to be able to reevaluate what the service delivery is, how we deliver these services, especially on online platforms, mobile services. And in all of this, we try to reduce cost and improve the accessibility of this product. That way, the customers, everyone can have access to every product they want to get, regardless of the period or the economic downturn. And also, we try to leverage on technology and utilize the technology to automate processes throughout and enhance the efficiency of this product. Also, we make sure we collaborate with different partners to optimize costs, because in everything you need to also consider the end users and what they are bringing in. You need to also form a partnership with other organizations to offer bundled services and provide greater value for the consumers.
So you're saying businesses should still, put aside money to invest in, product design, even in times like these?
Sorry, what did you say?
So you're saying businesses should still put aside funds, to invest, in product design, even when times are not the best, in the business cycle?
Yeah, definitely. I would say product design is very efficient regardless of the timing, because everyone wants to create a product that at the end is actually usable. Without a product designer or without a product being designed effectively to suit the customers, you're just designing a product that is not usable. And at the end, you see you're wasting time, you're wasting resources. So definitely, regardless of the time, what the product designer does in this down situation is to make sure it is optimized for the users. We try to make it very cost effective for the consumers, so that way they are not spending so much on the product. They get so much for less.
Okay, all right, definitely. We'll see how most of this business can actually navigate these times, and consumers as well. Thank you so much, Kizito Waigwe is a product service designer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And right, as I said before, no market is spared right now. If you look at the board, this shade of red is one of the deepest that you will find right there. Looking at the color right there, it's deep red. Not seen this type in a while now. Look at Ethereum. Double-digit losses right there in this market, 21.6%. Ethereum now trying to hold on to $2,000. And Bitcoin, 14.86% down, $51,834. Remember, Bitcoin was trying to get back to that 70,000 level, but now plummeted down below the 60,000 level, now trying to hold the 50,000 level, and no altcoin is spared at this point, looking at the board behind me. But definitely, let's look at some headlines now. We see the U.S. Fed, they're holding an emergency meeting to address this massive Bitcoin rout, and most of the markets there, the traditional markets, we see Nasdaq down about 4%. So we're seeing the U.S. Fed actually holding a meeting, trying to set up a meeting for today to see how they can calm the nerves of investors, at this time. But let's bring in Rume Ofi now, financial market analyst. Hello, Rume.
Hello, Larry. Good afternoon, Larry.
Yeah, so I know some investors are happy, for these kind of markets, but we know those that invested are not that happy. So, Rume, looking at this downturn we're seeing, is this the end?
The last time we saw this was in 2022. I think the FTX collapse is when we saw this. Right now, the VIX is up as it does. The volatility index really up, sending shockwave across all markets. You can see that the S&P 500 is down 2.6, Dow Jones is down 1.6, and as well Russell 2000 is down 4.6%. So it's across board, like you have already said. This is not the end, and I think this is just short term, and it's an opportunity for buy the discount low. What has actually sent shockwave to the market, even though the market has been overpriced for a while now, is that shockwave from the Japanese yuan. A lot of people have actually capitalized on the Japanese yuan, considering the fact that they have a zero interest rate in that part of the world, and taking loans, ship money, and they brought it to the US to be able to gain some money. It's been done in the financial market to buy Bitcoin and some other tech stocks. But now that they are increasing rates over there in that part of the world, it is now sending shockwave. People are now running hectare because it's not business as usual. I think it's called carry trade. A lot is still going to happen a bit, but in the short term, this is what we're going to see. I think I'm gradually becoming bullish in a way. I know Lad is going to speak to that, but I'm still wearing my red. It's still red in short term. Yeah, with your nice red blazer there, reflecting what's happening in the market. But talk to me now, what's the strategy for moments like these? Yeah, so the strategy is, like I always told the people in this space, you have to have at least a steady source of income that brings in disposable income for you to get into risky assets like cryptocurrencies. So right now you need to be doing your dollar cost averaging. What I mean in local parlance is buying small, into different assets of your choice. I prefer you get into Bitcoin and other asset like Ethereum and Cardano and the likes, so but you have to make sure that in doing that you have every other thing sorted out, like your rent, your food, shelter, and a couple of other things, which are essential importance for humans, so you don't have to get involved in things where it is going to be very difficult for you because you are investing in crypto. Right, so dollar or naira cost average, and that's what Rume is advising at this time. Thank you so much, Rume Ofi, financial market analyst. Thank you. Always a pleasure, Laddie. So there you have it. We'll keep tracking these markets to see how there's some kind of rebound at some point, or maybe a catalyst that can stop the carnage in most of these markets we track. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Lade Williams from me and the team right here at Channels HQ. It's bye for now.